This transformed relationship with pain catalyzed an alchemical process within me. When I received rejection after submitting an article about my experience, my first instinct was still to armor up against criticism. But instead, I sat with the disappointment, allowing it to move through me without defining me. The next day, I rewrote the piece with greater clarity and vulnerability. The pain became creative fuel rather than debilitating shame. I noticed how much energy was freed when I stopped fighting against difficult experiences. The constant vigilance required to avoid discomfort had been exhausting me far more than the direct experience itself. When I allowed myself to feel bad when things were bad, rather than requiring myself to immediately reframe, I moved through challenges with surprising efficiency. This willingness to embrace pain didn't mean wallowing in suffering. It meant encountering pain directly, so it could complete its movement through my system rather than becoming trapped. Like a wave, emotions needed their full expression to dissipate naturally. My attempts to truncate this process had only been prolonging my suffering. Emerging through the darkness, the irony wasn't lost on me. Only by surrendering to the complete dissolution of my carefully constructed identity could I discover what lay beneath all those protective layers. The collapse that had felt like ultimate failure was quietly transforming into the foundation for something I couldn't yet name. Like watching the first rays of dawn after believing night would last forever, I began noticing subtle shifts in my experience. Moments where the crushing weight seemed to lift ever so slightly. It started with small observations. One morning, I noticed sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains, casting patterns on the wall I'd never paid attention to before. I found myself watching this light show for nearly an hour, completely absorbed in the changing shapes and colors. This moment marked something profound. For the first time in years, I was fully present without an agenda, without trying to extract value from the experience or translate it into something productive. These moments of presence gradually expanded. While walking through a nearby park, something I'd previously done only for exercise with fitness metrics tracking my every step, I found myself captivated by the texture of tree bark, the complex patterns of shadows on the path, the symphony of birdsong I'd never bothered to hear before. My pace slowed naturally as my senses awakened to a world that had always been there. The persistent inner voice that had always demanded achievement, perfection, and external validation began to quiet. Not through force, but through recognizing its nature. I could see how this voice had been constructed from fragments of parental expectations, societal messaging, and my adaptive strategies for surviving in competitive environments. Understanding its origins allowed me to hold it with compassion rather than being controlled by its demands. My relationship with time transformed. Rigidly scheduled days gave way to a more organic rhythm. I discovered that creativity emerged not from forcing productivity during designated time blocks, but from creating space for natural expression. My calendar became a flexible tool serving authentic needs, rather than a taskmaster controlling my movements. The first steps toward rebuilding came from genuine curiosity. What would it feel like to follow interest rather than obligation? What activities brought inherent satisfaction? These questions led me to rediscover childhood passions long abandoned as impractical. Sketching, writing poetry, watching clouds transform in the sky. I began experimenting with creative projects simply for the joy of making. One afternoon, I spent 3 hours crafting an elaborate paper boat. The focused attention required brought a state of flow I hadn't experienced in years. The finished creation held no practical value, wouldn't advance my career, wouldn't impress anyone on social media. Yet it felt more meaningful than presentations I'd spent weeks perfecting. Through these experiments, I discovered genuine strengths obscured by my professional facade. The authentic me was defined by qualities I'd never valued enough. Deep listening, creative problem-solving, intuitive understanding of emotions, and an ability to hold space for contradictory perspectives. These strengths emerged not from striving, but from allowing myself to be exactly as I was in each moment. My vulnerability, once hidden, became an asset. By acknowledging limitations and uncertainties, I created permission for others to do the same. Conversations transformed from exercises in impression management to genuine exchanges. The energy previously consumed by maintaining my facade became available for authentic connection. One evening, I received a message from a former colleague who'd heard about my breakdown. "I've been struggling too," she confessed. "Everyone thinks I have it all together, but I'm drowning inside." This opened a conversation unlike any we'd had during years of working together. For the first time, we spoke as whole humans rather than professional roles. That conversation sparked others, and gradually, a small community formed around this shared willingness to be authentically seen. The integration continued as I welcomed back parts of myself I'd exiled, sensitivity hidden behind assertiveness, playfulness sacrificed for professionalism, creativity channeled exclusively into marketable skills, spiritual questioning dismissed as impractical. Each reclaimed aspect brought a sense of homecoming. This integration wasn't always comfortable. Sometimes grief over wasted years felt overwhelming. Other days, anger would surface at systems that had convinced me to abandon my authentic self. Yet even these difficult emotions became valuable messengers. I learned to welcome them, listen to their wisdom, and allow them to move through me rather than defining me. New values emerged organically. Authenticity, presence, and meaningful connection replaced achievement, control, and external validation. Success meant creating alignment between inner truth and outer expression. My guiding question shifted from, how can I get ahead? To how can I be most fully alive in this moment? 6 months after my breakdown, at a small gathering, someone asked about my profession. Instead of delivering a rehearsed elevator pitch, I paused, smiled, and said, I'm in the middle of a fascinating reinvention. I used to know exactly who I was professionally, but now I'm discovering who I am as a human being. The authenticity opened a conversation about personal transformation that continued for hours and created connections far more meaningful than any networking event I'd ever attended. The spiritual dimension emerged through direct experience. As layers of conditioning fell away, I encountered something that had been present all along, a fundamental aliveness existing prior to all identities and stories about myself. This wasn't something to achieve, but the ground of being that had always been there beneath the noise of striving. This recognition brought perspective. The breakdown revealed itself as necessary dismantling. The structures that collapsed weren't my true foundation, but adaptations that had outlived their usefulness. The dark night wasn't punishment, but initiation into a more authentic way of being. My relationship with uncertainty transformed. Where I'd once needed to control outcomes, I found comfort in not knowing. Questions became as valuable as answers. The journey as meaningful as the destination. This comfort with uncertainty allowed for genuine exploration rather than predetermined paths. I began creating a life aligned with this emerging self through small daily choices, guided by inner truth rather than external expectations. The most profound shift came in recognizing that awakening wasn't about becoming someone new, but about returning to what had always been true beneath the accumulated layers of adaptation and performance. When I look back at that boardroom moment now, I see it as the most sacred intervention my body could have offered me. That panic attack, what I once considered my greatest professional humiliation, was actually the first moment of genuine freedom I'd experienced in years. Maybe you're standing at the edge of your own breakdown right now. I want you to consider something radical. What if that breakdown contains the breakthrough you've been searching for? This journey is about shedding the constructed, performed falseness we hide behind. What awaits beyond the masks is simply you. It's always been you. Are you ready to meet yourself?